Hello, it's me. Happy New Year. I am currently in Burgundy, Bourgogne, a bit north of the city of Lyon, which was once named Lugdunum. Lugdunum? Lug- Lugdunum. Long story. I was going to talk about that actually. But first of all, Happy New Year. I hope you enjoyed the opening video. I should probably try not to move so much. Apparently, my camera picks up differences in lighting. So when I'm really close to you, you don't see the sky. When I'm really far away from you, you see all the sky. Pretty cool. I'm in a great mood, by the way. So, it's New Year's Day. I'm visiting a friend of mine who is a druid, who has his own little viticulture. He makes wine. He also has a bed and breakfast that's in an old 1600s. I would call it a villa. Most people would call it a villa. Apparently, it's called a maison bourgeois, like a townhouse, but not a townhouse like you would think in America with this, like, But it's basically a big set of buildings, with like one huge living space and a couple of other ones. A very common style of architecture around here for the winemakers. They have their wine machinery, the vats to make wine, and then they have their home, and then they have the places where they store the wine and all of that. So basically, I'm in wine country, but I don't actually give a shit about wine. Some wine is good. Red wine makes me cry, so I don't drink red wine. White wines are kind of okay, I mean, living in Europe, you kind of have to get into wine because everyone drinks it. Like they drink soda in America. But I usually just drink iced tea. I make a big thing of iced tea when everyone's having wine at night. That's a different story. I love iced tea. Anyway, so, I'm going to show you something real quick. This is what I'm looking at currently, which is pretty cool. Oh, yeah. It's a church. I don't know if you can see. Oh, man, it's like right around there. Let's see where I'm kind of focusing. Probably can't see it, but it's a very common style of Burgundian symbolism here. That is, it's basically it's a triskel. It's a three-circle sort of thing that you see in a lot of Celtic jewelry, and it's actually from the Celtic period that was then adopted by the Christians here to kind of become a symbol of Burgundy. This region was also called Franche-Comté, which was the freelance. So before the French Republic and really before the monarchy came along, the Burgundian rulers, who were mostly Frankish, Franks, of course, coming from Germany. France is named after a German tribe, a German people, the Franks. But so this region was kind of mostly independent from all of the other stuff going on in France. It was a free place. That's one of the fun history things about here. But what I wanted to talk about, I was talking about Lugdunum. So I was just visiting an abbey, Clo, which, sorry, cars are going to be going by. It's for New Year's Day in a small little winemaking village during a COVID epidemic. There's a lot of vehicles. But anyway, what was I saying? Lugdunum. So I was just in Clooney. Clooney is it was an old abbey. It was an old Benedictine abbey, I believe. It was the largest religious structure for the Christians up until the 1500s. I think it was the end of the 1500s when St. Peter's Cathedral was restored. Before that, the largest Christian religious institution in the world was in this area. Clooney, the Abbey of Clooney. It was called Clooney Trois, I think, or something like that. And so the monks there, maybe you know a little bit of the history of the Pope at Avignon, where there's a moment where there were two popes competing against each other. One was the French Pope, one was the Roman Pope. That was a little bit after the period of the Cathars, who were in Western France mostly. who were another rival religious group based off of Christianity, but with beliefs that were so far away from Christian doctrine. Many of them quite egalitarian, by the way, a bit anarchist. But their beliefs were so far away from, the Roman thing that they were heretics and they were hunted down. That was the Albigensian Crusades and all of that. So now we're talking Middle Ages, but let me start with the Abbey of Clooney. So the Abbey of Clooney stood, and it became the second largest Christian building in the world up until the French Revolution. When the French Revolution happened, the French revolutionaries took the building over. And there was a point at which, they kind of offered, hey, Pope, pay us money and you can have this building. But the Pope is actually really happy to get rid of the Abbey because of the strength of the kind of religious belief and the religious learning, as it were, the scholarship, the theology, etc. of this region. It was constantly competing with, Rome as a center of Christianity. So the Pope said, no, you could take it. So they dismantled, I think it was 3/4 of the Abbey. A little bit of it still stands. And that's what I was visiting today with my man. He's with me. And that's all that's left there. Now, in the Middle Ages, as I said, that Abbey was a really important center of learning. But here's a fun thing. If you go back a little bit further, before Clooney became a Christian center of learning, as it were, it was sacred to the Gauls as well, the Celts. That fountain that I showed you, that fountain is ancient. It's called the La Source des Romanines. It's called Romanine because during the Roman Empire, the occupation of what became Provence. Provence, by the way, if you don't already know this, is it meant province, the conquered area. So when someone says somebody is provincial, what they're really saying is, they're conquered people. But so this was all Roman area, and there was a Roman prelate or prefect or one of those things who built a villa here, right next to that fountain, that sacred source. Now, it was a sacred source to the Gaulish people who were here before that. Not very far away from here is Bibracht and also the ruins of Alicia. Alicia was the last big Celtic Gallo fortress to be defeated by Julius Caesar. When it was defeated, the Gaulish Confederation fell away and all of these lands became Roman. Another fun thing about that spring that I showed you, it's been remodeled, reconstructed, etc. I don't think there's anything left of the original stone. Perhaps there is. But it was never Christianized, interestingly enough. If you go south from here to the area around Aix-en-Provence, there is the third largest freshwater spring in the world. And it's called Vaucluse. Vaucluse was sacred to the Gauls. Again, all springs like that were sacred. And in fact, the name that they had for it for a while was a Greek name, because the Greeks would come to visit it as well. Even before the Roman Empire, the Greeks were traveling around. The Greeks were the ones who were doing all of the, theory and religious stuff. So it had a Greek name, and there was a dragon there. Still is. But that dragon was supposedly drowned in there by a Catholic bishop later on. All of the stories around here are like that. The Tarrasque was a big, massive monster that was a land spirit that was supposedly killing virgins or something like that. And then some Catholic bishop, or actually I think it was Therese, Saint Therese, somebody like that. She conquered it, killed it, You go further north to the city of Metz. There was another dragon, another river dragon, as it were, called the Grui, or Grali. I can never pronounce it really well, but that was also a sacred land spirit that was then conquered by a Catholic missionary, bishop, monk, whatever, and then sent back into the river. Interestingly enough, the river's where it lives, so it didn't really go anywhere. That river is the Moselle. The Moselle goes into the Rhine. I've talked a lot about the Rhine daughters and all of that. So, and I mentioned, so we're a bit north of the city of Lyon. Lyon is the Latin name for it, which was a approximation of the name that the Gauls called the place, was Lugdunum. Luke. You probably know of Luke. If you know anything about Irish mythology and Irish gods, there's Luke, the god there. That same god appears to occur everywhere where the Celts were. Just to also remind you, the Gauls were Celtic people. And now we tend to think of the Celts as being the Irish and the Scottish and the Welsh. But most of France and much of Spain and part of Italy and part of Greece and part of Eastern Europe, actually, were all Celtic. All of Switzerland was Celtic. Anyway, so Lugdunum, which is also shares a name with a city called London, which was Ludinium, I believe. That was also named after Luke. So this god appears everywhere in all of these place names. And pretty close to cities like that, you'll find that there were sacred sites of learning. The sacred sites of learning nearby here were, of course, places that, like Clooney. Places where Druids would congregate and talk. There are a lot of old Druid circles around here. A lot of the hilltops were kind of set up so that you could see the fires burning from one to another. Lots of old ruins here. So you see this continuation, though, is my point. You see a continuation between the old centers of learning from the pagan Celts before to the Christian occupation. Many of those Christians still adapting a lot of the pagan ideas, especially the places where Greeks would congregate, because the Greeks, of course, were also pagan. Until later on, those places became de-Christianized also in France because of the Revolution. Even though, if you were to ask anybody, France is probably the most religious place on earth. It's just that religion is kind of inside. Catholic morality is intense here, even amongst gay dudes. Really interesting observations on that I probably can't really talk about in this video, but you see a lot of carryover of the old Catholic beliefs that get sublimated into underground kind of morality, things that people think are good and bad. Those are Catholic, even despite the fact that this country, France, is supposedly secular and has been secular for 200 something years and has a separation of church and state, all of that. But so kind of weaving all of those threads in together of the these sacred sites, and then these sacred beings, these land spirits, oftentimes dragons, very often, excuse me, I smoked too much. You know that. Oftentimes associated with water. Now, if you remember all of my conversations about Melusine and Ritona in Luxembourg, it's the same thing. Melusine was the spirit of the water there, the river there. She was the one who kind of gave power, and then she was sort of conquered by... There's a weird sort of Christian story where, she's enchained, and really she's a good Christian woman if someone will go make her do the Lord's Prayer 9 times or something like that, then she'll be saved, and if that doesn't happen, then all of Luxembourg will fall into the sea or something like that. There are also all these other stories about, like I said, the Cruy, the Sarask, etc. Oftentimes, monstrous dragon-like things associated with water, associated with sacred springs, all over the place. These old pagan beliefs continue, and sometimes it feels like, when you have this like tangle of cords, like electric cords, let's say like ear or headphones or whatever you call it, and then everything else all tangled up, or a bit like Christmas lights or anything. And you start untangling it, and you're like, oh god, this is a mess. And, there's always a point where you kind of want to give up, but then you pull one thing. As soon as you pull that one thing, everything else sort of loosens, and then you see, oh, this incredibly difficult, impossible knot is actually just have to pull it the right place, and everything else starts coming out. And suddenly you see this bigger pattern, which of course are the individual threads that were all knotted together. And I think for the last few years of me being in Europe, it's been like that. It's been like that all the time, where I visit a place and I catch wind of a story, or I look at a place name and I'm like, that place name sounds like something else. What is that? And then you go read a book or Google or whatever. Although I usually find that even doing that is pretty useless. You got to find somebody who will tell you something that will then lead you to somewhere else or something else, and then you start weaving all of these other things, and then suddenly you've got this big knot that's untangled, and you're sitting here looking at all of these amazing threads of ancient history that are all just staring you at the face, and you thought it was just this big clump of things that were useless and you needed to throw away. No, they're still there. They're still usable. They're still screaming through the land, everywhere. Again, as I said, this chapel I'm looking at. My turn. Here. So this chapel I've been looking at this entire time. It's got that massive rose window, and then up there at the tower, you can't see it very well, or at all probably. That's the old Celtic symbol, right there, just on this big Christian place that was supposedly hiding and destroying and displacing everything that was here before. It's still there. It's all still here. And so am I. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I did too. I want to see if I can get you to catch a little bit of this amazing sunset that's happening right now. Yeah. On a clear day, you can see the Alps from here. It's not a clear day, but it not being a clear day means we get to see that light. I love you all. I love you all. And thank you for all of your support. And I'll see you pretty soon. I'm going to try to make these a little bit more regularly. It's been it's been a little hard to keep up on them, but yeah. And visit Burgundy sometime if you like wine or galls or beautiful sunsets like that. All right. Love you all. Bye.